put a little bit more description on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome back to Senate Transportation. We are going to be talking
Sections 13 and 14.
section 13 and 14. Did we put that on the agenda?
Yes.
Ah, that was helpful.
Yeah.
Patrick Murphy, welcome back to the committee.
Sections 13 and 14. The renumbered ones at the end.
As originally passed by the House.
Yeah, but I think they're still in red. So Donna didn't renumber them.
An older, low efficiency vehicle, is that the one where we changed it to 18 months? And the replace your ride flexibility, is that what you're here for?
I think so.
All right. Why you're pleased.
For the record, Patrick Murphy, Vermont Agency of Transportation. And I believe I'm here to speak on a couple of these sections that you've been working through. So there's the Replace Your Ride program where we've asked for a little bit more flexibility around the inspections requirement. We've come across some cases where folks come in and they're not exactly within that 12-month window that's been in statute. We had proposed some language around flexibility on if someone had passed their vehicle safety inspection portion of the test, but not the emissions test, that they'd still be eligible for the Replace Your Ride program. There's only a couple of other programs in the country that are like this Replace Your Ride program, in Colorado and some of the air quality districts in California. And all of them have some sort of requirement around vehicle registration and inspection. And the intention behind those, and I think the intention behind the language that was originally a part of the authorization for this program, is to ensure that the vehicle that's being replaced is actually being driven. And it might be driven for some time, and so you're therefore taking those potential emissions off the road by replacing it. So that's why it's in place. When a vehicle fails in emissions portion of the vehicle safety inspection test, there is a waiver program that allows it to be driven for another year, and it's considered a pass. But there's good reason to have that car replaced, to get those emissions off the road and not to make the applicant have to put some more money into a vehicle only to have that vehicle scrapped. So that's where the agency was coming from with that language. I think the 18-month suggestion deals largely with a lot of the issues that come from that.
So if I recall the conversation, and I think this is it, I think it was, what if it just fails the safety inspection, but within the last year? I mean, do we still want to allow that car to, as long as it was inspected within the last year, shouldn't that still apply and not just the emissions carved out?
I thought we closed this out by
thought we did, but
changing
maybe
18 months and dealt with it because it was because you couldn't pass your inspection if your emissions control was defective. So how can you say you passed it except for you didn't pass it or would have passed it? So we went to the 18 months as a way of dealing with it. So I'm just really.
If you're okay with 18 months.
If you're okay with 18.
Maybe we just needed to check.
Oh, are you okay?
Yeah, I think we're good with the 18 months, that it deals with the majority of the issues that we were bringing up.
Right. And it's so much easier than 18 months.
I mean, the other suggestion that we might make is that that 18 months could be extended to 24, and how we implement it would be to not use that full. It could be an up to 24 months, so that we're able to provide some for some exemptions, and instead we would have kind of what the guidelines would say would maybe be 12 months, and then in certain circumstances, if we have the request, we could waive those and go up to the 24
Are you
and allow
proposing
it
we
by
change our
statute.
language in section 13?
Just to be clear, I think it's fine as is, but we do hear from folks,
Are we talking about the same language? You're not talking about the as passed by the House, but new language that we're
Yeah,
looking at?
yeah.
new language that you added in
Right
that
here,
18 months.
yeah, 18
extended it
months.
to 18 months.
You're okay with that.
Which version?
Line 12, page 28.
Thank you.
It says within the prior 18 months.
Okay, just pass an annual inspection, nothing to do with emissions.
Because we didn't want
Yeah, I like that.
clunkers that hadn't been on the road, basically, and inspected for a period of
I
time.
do remember us going back and forth on 24 months versus 18 months. You said 24 months. What do you think the pros cons of that 18-month window? So let's say it passes this year, then it fails. This gives a 6-month window from then for them to use it for this program. Do we want a 12-month window from when it?
I think that what we find with just the language generally, when it's very highly prescriptive, is that we'll inevitably come across a case that falls, 17 months or whatever. I don't think.
19 months.
Or 19, but it's, I think in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge change one way or the other, that if we're talking about, probably single digits, the number of cases.
But as much as this says 18 months, I think it's important conceptually that we're really giving a 6-month grace period to be able to use a failed car for this program. Do we as a committee like that, a 6-month grace period to use a car that failed an inspection, or do we want to give a full year that fails inspection? I think that's the open question.
Or up to a full year, it depends on when the registration.
Programmatically, the way we would implement it is probably by requiring some other sort of form that would attest to the fact that somebody is still driving it, even if it hadn't passed inspection, that it is in fact a vehicle that we're taking off the road. And that could be done through insurance documents, that could be done through, invoicing, through auto shops that the car's been worked on in the past couple of months to 24-month period or 18.
I
So
like
it's-
the 18 months because it's a defined period, then you don't have to get into the gray necessarily as much, but are we relitigating what
No.
we did?
Well, we are, but we're not anymore. We're done.
I'm having a hard time.
Thank you, Chair.
We're just gonna keep it to 18 months. I think the only other part that we have open, is this part about, maybe, surprised we didn't close it out already, about electric bikes and giving the authority of the agency to move money around. Like you could move money into the electric bike program, but then you have to replace it if you take it from another program, one of your.
So there's language in there, on just sticking with, so there's language in the Electrify Your Fleet program that you had modified just to, put a cap on the amount of, funding that could go to any vehicle, including an e-bike. And so we just administratively put that 25% cap in place.
And not to exceed the 2,500.
Yeah, and so the only suggestion that we had there, Senator, was just that we would have up to language.
Right.
And that would allow us to lower the cap
So
in
instead
some
of
cases.
equal to 25%,
Right,
it was up to,
that's right. On the
Where do you see
question,
that?
on page 30, line 9.
9.
Okay.
So instead of equal, replace with,
so in the case that we wanted a lower cap, we'd be able to do that. The question you had about e-bikes was sort of a process that the House Transportation Committee had come up with to allow access to funding from other programs to get e-bike funding out more quickly. And to be honest, there's not gonna be a great deal of difference between,
Section 18.
the first few weeks of June versus July 1st. The need, in other words, the need to be able to access that funding.
So if we were to strike section 18, I guess the question is, do you care? Like, are you saying like, oh, we want to have this authority to move the $50,000, or you're not planning on it? I mean, if you moved it, because yeah, that's what you're saying, is it was only allowing you to do it quicker. If we're not gonna put the money in, then you don't really need section 18.
That's right.
We're not putting
And this wasn't something that was part of the government budget.
So we will close out section 18
and
by
strike it out.
striking it.
On that point,
Yes.
do you have any reaction to the notion of just winding this program down? Any comments on that?
I don't think so.
He's not prepared to comment on this one.
I mean, it wasn't a part of the governor's budget. I can share that the climate pollution reduction grant, that was submitted, last week, by the Agency of Natural Resources includes funding for the e-bike program. So that would be federal funding of almost, I think, $2 million.
Well, anticipating that.
Yeah.
Is that a competitive grant though?
That is a competitive grant, and that's where we have, in total, almost 40 million is for transportation. So the grant was for about $99 million. So we'll find out about that in July. But obviously not guaranteed funding.
There's a grant, so it wouldn't require a match.
That is 100% federal funding for that particular grant.
Well, that's more,
Yeah, I mean, so we just said, so you included e-bike incentives.
E-bike incentives are included in that.
Senator. Okay. Senator Shipman.
if that money comes in, do you need that language in section 18? No.
Turn the heat up. You want the heat up?
Turn it up.
Turn the heat up first.
You don't want me to take a chill, do you?
No,
Maybe I
no.
could.
Well,
73.
You should.
That's good enough. No, I don't need that.
I don't think it was actually 70.
No, I don't think it was. Just turn
No, it
it.
doesn't work.
We had.
No, it doesn't work.
I hope it does.
It's probably just like,
It meant-
not hooked into anything, it's just to make you feel better.
I'm gonna 80, see if we feel it.
See if we get Agatha coming in, asking why we're using it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I missed the new chief.
Yeah,
Oh,
He wants to put magnetometers in gradually, not tomorrow.
and what?
to the entrance.
Controlled access, so we would badge in a couple of entrances and the public would be routed to one entrance, which would probably have magnetometers.
Which is out, we're talking about the new one.
That's a question for me, which entrance would be the public, and I don't know. if
They're
you-
talking about an ADA compliance and some changes, so it would be out by the loading dock where the
Kind
public would
of
come
the,
in.
or least amount of people now come
So,
Badge those monster doors, can they be badge controlled?
Yeah.
Really, those big, huge things?
well, the
in.
one
They've asked,
out
they
by
want
the
to buy
Lincoln,
building behind Lincoln.
Is that a big heavy monster?
Oh, it
Yeah.
is.
Well, and it also seems heavier because it's on.
I always push the button to have it open automatically. When we had
Patrick,
a
you have anything
meeting.
to say about the doors? Now that
He supports the government right now.
no money in the budget for that. We were talking about, you might have this off the top of your head, where are we with the electric car sales? We had a debate whether, if we were at 12% or like 7% as a percentage.
So it depends on what you're referring to. So
Yeah.
battery electric vehicles
Both,
or plug-in.
including
Okay,
plug-in
so-
hybrids.
Yeah, for the past year, we're at 10%. I don't know what
New
this,
sales or
Of
existing
new-
car
new
stock?
sales.
New sales, okay.
so right now we're at probably about 2% of total registrations.
But as far as the
Um,
climate plan talked about when we would go to a fee, they talked about 50% of sales.
Talked about
10.
We talked about 15% of new vehicle sales. And
We might accelerate
we
that.
probably got close to that in the last quarter of 2023. I don't know if we don't yet have the numbers for the first quarter of 2024. But we're getting close to that. There's also, other data points that folks point to as like 5% for battery electric vehicles as being the tipping point. So, and it's of course not a clean number, like as soon as you hit 15, you're okay, or,
No, it's a
14.
target.
So it's, it's a general,
One that can have a little slip. Oh, we're anticipatory.
Right, we're gonna get there.
Based on the trend, when this kicks in, it's going to be at that
Yeah,
level.
well, that's fine.
Just for clarity, because this was already asked and I could expect it to come up in any floor
Yeah,
speech at
it
this
will.
point. Can you say battery electric vehicles, new sales are that 10%, or is that battery and plug-in hybrids?
that's battery and plug-in hybrid.
Anyone
Yeah,
with a
so battery electric vehicle sales have been an increasing percentage of that total,
Sure.
so.
And with the
the
California
past
standards
year.
coming in, I think that's gonna, the rules have been filed and approved, so I think that would be a major impetus.
Yeah, with 2026, we have the Advanced Clean Cars 2 rules. We now have potentially some new EPA rules that are gonna push the overall fleet towards electrification. And some of the studies that have been done for the legislature over the last several years, when it was talked about implementing registration fees and, road usage charges, that was time period where we actually had incentive programs in place. And so it was talked about as something to be paired with an incentive program.
But now if you coupled it and just using it.
Yeah, so we have
Well,
well-established incentive programs. If the federal funding was to come through and we'll know about that in July, we'll have a substantial amount of money to add into those, so.
the revenue that we would get from implementing the road usage.
I think we'd have to go back and ask them
Did you have
again.
that?
What's
It was
the
90/45.
With the road usage fee of $80 and $45, do you have an estimate on what
I
that
can
would?
pull that up, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you had calculated.
Yeah, I keep doing that, half of 80 is 45 for some reason.
Well, you need to go back to
80,
school.
89 and 44,
That's, oh, it's 100%, so it's 89.
Yeah.
89, that's
44,
right. Yeah, we
44,
read
50.
yeah. And so some,
44.50.
an update on that front, the FHWA has finally announced that they have released the funding opportunity, so we will be applying before May 27th
So they released the deadline.
to implement the mileage rate.
So they say, when do they think that the results, or when they would tell you whether you got the
How
money?
much of the revenue is on that?
No, they have not given us a timeline on that.
The thing that's Patrick's
Oh,
He's gonna look.
oh, he's looking it
gonna tell
up.
you. He's calculated it.
Oh,
Yeah,
I think for the record, Michelle Boomhauer, I think that the USDOT will make pretty rapid turnaround on the awards. That seems to be the trend now that we're in an election year.
Right, they wanna like get the money out before there's a potential change.
Mhm.
So when do you think, let's say you found out by September,
I think we're still on track, because we'll have to get into an agreement with them and all of that. We'd still be on track for operations to begin, hopefully in January 2026. Maybe. Maybe. It could be July of 2026, it all really depends on how quickly we can access the monies.
and then get things figured out?
But Parsons, we've been having those conversations, so I think we're ready, and I think we're gonna have a strong application because of that.
And so for the plug-in user fee, it would be pretty much a seamless transition,
Yeah, we would just adjust the percentage and,
maybe the dollar amount or something like that,
exactly.
but that would be easy, but for the,
we're talking about MBUF now.
yeah, but for the fully electric vehicles, they would stop paying the fee and they would start paying the,
yeah, so probably what would happen is, when we become operational, they'll, when they go in for their inspection during that operational year, they're still gonna be paying, I think we've set it up, so they'd still be paying the fee until they get
For the
a full year's
registration.
worth of mileage documented.
Duplicate,
Yeah.
okay.
That would probably be the easiest transition.
And you're not, I think at one point, or maybe this was just from other states, that they have an option, like pay a fee
Right.
or do the mileage. Are you
I
looking
think,
at that, or?
I
That's
think they'll
already-
have to remind me, I think we were setting a sort of a steeper fee for people if they didn't wanna have their mileage.
Were you gonna give them that option?
Yeah, there would be, the flat fee in that scenario would almost be used instead for enforcement. So if you didn't elect to just pay that higher amount upfront, and you didn't, let's say you didn't go to the vehicle and safety inspection for that year, upon re-registering the vehicle, you would just pay that higher amount that's tagged at, some percentile of the average, maybe 98 percentile. So it become a flat fee
Be like
in effect,
$150.
but
So they could, so somebody
and
that
if
would
you
be,
were choosing, say, to pay on a different frequency rather than paying up front, then, that you'd have to figure out a way to reconcile it at the end, but basically you'd be spreading out on a monthly basis that higher fee, and then, that the balance would be basically carried over into your next year.
and AMBUF would be run through DMV, would be a similar
Yeah.
payment system. So if the usage fee that we have in the bill was to pass, they could pay that $89 for the next 2 years, depending on when their registration comes up. And then when the AMBUF comes in, could they continue to pay a fee, but it would just be a different dollar fee?
Well, I mean,
Or it depends on the
it's up to yourselves really, but
Well, as far as the way you're applying,
the way that we would implement a mileage-based user fee would be more on a staggered basis. So somebody who paid through intermediate, registration fee, they would pay when their next registration was
Right.
up. So it's not like
but
somebody's
would they have
going
a
to.
choice to say, like, I don't wanna do miles, I just wanna pay the $200 a year or whatever?
Yeah,
Are you designing to have that
But
option?
then that's not fair, because someone who could be a high mileage could say, I'd rather do the fixed because
Right, we just set it high,
my usage is,
but some states do that, right?
some states do, and what they have found is that they end up just losing money for that reason, that the higher mileage.
People just figure out, oh, okay, I drive 50,000
That's
miles
right.
a year, so I'm
Yeah.
just gonna pay the fee.
So it's not to say that it couldn't become, as part of the work that we do with the grant, that it couldn't become an option as long as it's sort of pitched high enough so as to not lose
Catch
revenue.
the highest.
Yeah, because this is the problem we're trying to solve, is not to lose revenue over time, and to make sure that we're capturing something that's consistent with what had been the case for the gas tax.
Okay, so there should,
I'd also expect that this would motivate more lower-income individuals to possibly not get their cars inspected, and we'll have more vehicles on the roads just to avoid that larger hit. Because right now, it's whatever it costs for the fixes, and then this would be, I think you said estimates of as much as $200, $300, $400, depending on the miles. So as beater electric vehicles are part of our conversation.
So the way that we had talked about structuring it would actually encourage more folks to go through the inspection process, because it would be at the registration process that people would be charged. So if you hadn't completed your registration,
I see.
your flat fee would be a higher amount, and
you haven't done the inspection, so
that
you go to register.
encourages people who are driving less than that amount.
So
to
it's
go ahead and
it's
get
based
their
on your registration date, not your inspection date. When you go register, they'll say, what was your miles when you did the inspection, or is it part of the necessity is to align those two dates?
No, so I don't think we need to kind of like
aren't we at
work out
like
the system
27?
This
here,
is
but
not gonna happen in January 2026.
Well, I'm just wondering.
the mileage is gathered through the vehicle
I like what's the meaning of life here.
that would then be fed, and this hasn't all been figured out yet.
Yeah,
but This would then be fed into, my DMV or some, way to basically assign an amount that somebody would owe for the next year, and then it would
So it doesn't
continually
matter,
be
since it's a
reconciled.
rolling, it doesn't matter that there could be a 10-month.
Right, because it'd be continually reconciled at the registration process.
And they can put money in their account every month or whatever.
Oh,
So it's
so
more like-
that helps deal with the one,
So DMV is gonna figure that out,
We'll bring a diagram next year.
because they really
They
did
did
want
bring
us
a
to
diagram.
did that for the temporary system.
You had a lot going on. I can't find the sheet off the top, of my head here, but,
That
It-
showed us the
yeah, but
number.
I'll get that to you.
I
And then
thought
basically,
one that was in here was a few $100,000,
But
What is
that didn't
like
get a plug-in
$600,000 or
hybrid.
something.
I didn't think it had a plug-in
The-
hybrid.
I'm looking at an estimate for $89.67. It was modified to 44.5. And, that's assuming no implementation in 2024, right? Implementation January 2025.
Or earlier if possible.
Okay, and so, that basically, it'd get you over $1 million in 2025, calendar year 2025. And, probably close to $2 million.
But that was with the higher fee?
Yeah, but I'm just,
Right.
probably,
Okay.
2 to 3 million in the 2 years that you might have it in place.
We're gonna wanna pin that down, before the floor speech, because, Senator already came in today saying they had the impression this was just gonna raise like $300,000, so the
Right.
fiscal note that we're gonna,
Yeah, I thought it was like 600.
that's consistent with what my back of the.
Yeah.
$2 million on the brain, I don't know why, but.
So we can have
So-
Patrick and Logan coordinate on the fiscal note.
If you use the numbers, EV numbers from January of this year, it's 894,000. But
Oh,
we're
900,000
hoping that
is
will
not
increase by implementation because theoretically
There's
more
more.
EVs will be out there, so.
No, it's close to $1 million then.
Yeah, the calculations that I ran were based upon projections of where we'd be at 2025.
Right.
So it's, if you run it off of
Right.
where we are
Okay.
now, then, you're several thousand vehicles shorter than where we would be.
Senator Shindle.
Can I raise another topic? So, did I hear you say that in your mind that we would allow for people to pay gradually into a DMV account what they would owe for these mileage-based user fees?
Yeah, that was the equity component we've been talking about all along, because people currently pay on a, weekly basis on their gas tax.
I would love to broaden that conversation. If the voters let me come back next session, I think we should do that same. Yeah, forced.
With property taxes?
Yes. So I served on South Burlington City Council, and property taxes are bewildering to a lot of homeowners. When you get 3 times a year, you gotta come up with X thousands of dollars.
That's what I told them about.
I love a world where we as a state made it easy for people to escrow without with those that don't hold mortgages, which there are some out there, to facilitate the monthly
Yeah, I know.
contribution to put aside for their state tax, their property tax.
Some towns do that voluntarily, kind of unofficially.
Ways for the state to make that even easier for
If
you.
only you knew somebody on finance.
I know,
Work on it.
But that's true, it's because it's such a large amount as opposed to quarterly, or monthly. I guess most mortgages require you to escrow, right?
Yep.
Your property taxes.
And it's for the ones that don't have all the mortgage that.
Well, they don't make you, but it's an option. I do it with mine and it's just fantastic.
Making that easier to save and sure.
I never have had a mortgage. My house.
You were pretty good with the dollar.
Well, it was, you know how much my house cost? $12,000. And from 1967, I mean, you could buy a VW back then for what, 1,800, a Beetle or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's 100 years ago, so 12,000. But it was one of those, it needed a lot of work kind of houses, but
Got one of those.
yeah. Mhm.
Right.
That's all I buy, they need a lot of work houses.
Old farmhouses.
Yeah.
Okay, Patrick, anything
It's
about
been
to say
a
about?
wide ranging discussion. I'm glad I could help you with very little of it.
It's nice of you to drop by.
About those Cowboys.
Is there anything else in the fee bill that you want to talk to us about, Patrick? Or anything else? Mortgages?
Now mortgages.
I think
What
I'm
is a
good
mortgage?
for now. I
What
would
is
just,
the interest rate now? 7%? Oh, is that, I remember back in the 70s, it was
275.
double digit at one point.
275 in 2020.
Wow.
Okay, we will make that change to 25%. And we'll try not to buy you back unless we have.
okay. I will be
Yeah,
sure to send you those estimates.
if you could send
Yeah, you could.
an estimate,
That would help.
but I think You will be doing a fiscal, will that be the fiscal note would include?
Yeah, once the Garrison clarified already.